All right, everyone, welcome to tonight's episode of Stand the Gap podcast. Again, we're excited to have you here because today marks another step forward in strengthening our communities and empowering the people who depend on us. Stand the Gap is an organization associated with CCMS. The reason being is to show up where others won't. So, whether the gaps in resources, political opportunities, leadership, we fill it boldly, compassionate, and together. Today, you're not just attending an event, you're joining a movement and built on action, unity, and the belief that real change happens when ordinary people do extraordinary things. We're super excited for tonight. We have Mr. Derrel Palmer, candidate for Supervisor District 2 here in Rankin County. Thanks for coming on, Derrel. I know we're coming up Tuesday on the election, so we're almost there. I know we were talking briefly just a moment ago. Tell me how you're feeling about everything.
Feel pretty good, Chris. First, let me say thanks for having me on. Looking forward to this. You and I spoke about Stand the Gap and the Conservative Coalition of Mississippi, and I think y'all doing a lot of great things. I'm ready for Tuesday. I feel good. It's kind of like people ask me, well, how do you think it's going to go? Well, no, we don't get many Gallup polls or AP or Fox News polls, so it's just word of mouth. But my wife and I both feel like we've done what we needed to do. We've talked to the people we need to talk to. We're not done yet. Still got some more to do Monday. And of course, we'll be at the polling places on Tuesday, but we feel good. We're going to go to sleep Monday night knowing that it's in God's hands and we've done what we're supposed to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, this isn't your first go at it. I know you ran for supervisor in the past. What motivated you then, and what motivated you again to run for supervisor?
Totally different. Then, I mean, well, I guess it's a little bit of the same. I mean, I just felt like I've got something to offer to Rankin County. I'm always one that can be quick to complain about things and make comments about things ought to be a little bit better, a little bit different. And when I first ran in 11, I ran against an incumbent. And I just felt like I could make a difference. I felt like I could do the job. I could make a difference for Rankin County. At that point, when I lost, I knew right then I was going to run again in 4 years. And so I kept working on it for that 4 years, was not successful. And at that point, I was deciding I was through with politics other than being a bystander. Uh, I retired from full time work in December, was on a vacation when I received a call from Scott Berry telling me that he was going to resign and that suggested that I run, told me I should run. So I started praying about it, got another phone call about an hour later from another pretty powerful Rankin County figure, and told me I should run. I said, well, maybe it's something to this. So my wife and I spent the rest of our vacation enjoying the time, but spent a lot of time in prayer discussion about running. Got back, talked to a number of other people, including my pastor. And his sermon the following week was on choices. And of course, his main choice he was talking about from the pulpit was our choice to make our decision, what our relationship with Jesus Christ. And I knew that wasn't meant for me. I'm already good with that. But I realized the choice I was making was to serve the people of Rankin County. So I just made the decision and went public with it on July 4th. And here I am. Just feel like I can make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you've definitely been involved. You're the voice of the Northwest Rankin Cougars. You're still doing that, right? You're still involved with the school and kind of doing that broadcasting, right?
I am. I made the trip to Gulfport last week for a playoff game that didn't turn out very good for us. But yeah, I still do football, some volleyball, a little basketball, and then baseball and softball in the spring, mostly baseball.
Well, like I know you said, you weren't successful in it, but I think you were. I think it's just it's God's timing, man. It's all God's timing and everything you're doing, and it's about one of the I think one of the just principles of conservatism is personal responsibility, and an individual's not government. And, being responsible for decisions that are being made and the outcomes of them, and you've shown that hard work and initiative by being involved in the community, and I respect that. And it takes a lot of discipline to want to run for office and put yourself out there. Each person must carry their own load, as it says, and you've definitely done that out in the community. And again, I commend you for wanting to do this. And for speaking of doing this, I mean, supervisor is a pretty big role. I mean, what are some of the core responsibilities of the supervisor? Because not everybody kind of knows about that.
It's amazing how few people really know, and how many times I've gotten that question in the campaign this last 5 months. And the number one thing I tell people basically is we manage your money. When your tax dollars go or out from your ad valorem taxes on your house and your cars and your property taxes, all of that goes into the county budget. And it's the role of the county supervisor to manage that budget. There are 5 supervisors in every county in Mississippi. Counties are divided equally amongst those 5 supervisors as far as population base, but they vote for the entire county. So that's the number one thing. And of course, within that budget, obviously comes your safety from fire and police protection. The education budget is done by the school district, but it all has to be approved by the board of supervisors. So that's a big part of it. Roads and bridges, and we could go on about all the little things that it's a part of. But bottom line is fiscal responsibility and managing the budget for the county.
Yeah, speaking of fiscal responsibility, I know like taxes is kind of a big thing. Nobody wants to pay more taxes now than they have to. But is there anything specifically that you think you could do to kind of ensure that the government and the supervisors in Rankin County are really, being efficient and not being wasteful? What can a supervisor do in that regard?
Well, the main thing is watching where the money is being spent and being proactive. I mean, obviously, infrastructure is the big buzzword that everybody wants to talk about. Roads and bridges, they're going to wear out. They're going to have to be replaced. And the biggest thing with that, and we've got a good road manager in Rankin County, and he has a plan going out years as far as projects and when roads need to be done. But there are things that come up in the meantime. But is making sure staying on top of that to where you don't have something that's a surprise that you're not planning for. You've got to always be on top of it. The supervisors obviously is not an engineer. I'm not going to go out and be able to look at a road and say the base layer of this needs to be done whatever with. So the main thing is just being aware and staying on top of it. But then being able to look at a budget and look where the money is being spent. And you and I both know, and without even looking at the details of the Rankin County budget, very few government budgets are as lean as they could be. And so that's the one
Mhm.
thing. I run my house that way. We're debt free, other than a year left to pay on my house. And that's not saying that a county can't do that, but a county should be able to do that. Which issuing a bond is nothing more than debt to a county. And that's the main thing: is being fiscally responsible, looking at the budget, figuring out what do we need to do to keep this budget within our current tax structure. There's only 2 ways to increase revenue in a county: is increase millage or have increased growth. And so I don't want to increase millage. I don't want to increase taxes. So therefore, you've got to make sure the growth is there or cut spending somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, speaking of budgets, I mean, you said it great. You kind of look at it as how you look at your house. I think the government should be run the same way. If you're not bringing in, as much as you're spending, then you probably have an issue. What do you use anything in your house that you think you could adapt to in county government, guiding principles that you would use to kind of help, adopt annual budget and where to prioritize money?
Well, start with how much revenue you've got, and you've got a pretty good idea of that because the tax assessor's got the tax rolls, and you kind of know what money's coming in, and you got to start with that, and you don't spend more than you got coming in. At our house, we don't buy something we can't afford. If we want to go on a trip, we look at the budget. Do we have the money to pay for it? Because I'm not going to charge it. If we want to go out to dinner so many times, well, no, we've already been 3 times. We can't go again for another week because we don't. We've got to stay within our limits. And I think you've got to do that at times in the county. There's a lot of discretionary funds that are spent in a county budget that you've got that you can watch. Obviously, you got to make sure payrolls are done. You got to make sure the infrastructure is paid for, roads and bridges and those things. But there's a lot of extra expenses that come on that you could manage, and if you have to, tighten the belt a little bit.
Yeah, so what's the best way for citizens and voters to know exactly where their money's being spent, as far as the county budget is being used?
And that's a good question. And I don't know. I haven't looked and found where the full budget is available to just the general public. I do know that you can see basically where the money's going in big categories. And I don't know that, and this is something I've struggled with, is should the entire budget be opened up to everybody in the county? Now, I would say there's some things in that would be sensitive, like payroll to certain, I mean, elected officials, obviously payroll, our salaries would be public knowledge. but some others may or may not should be public knowledge of what you're paying clerical staff in each individual. But at the same time, if you open up 100% to everybody, you know just as well as I do, you're going to have 100,000 CPAs out there in the county or want to be CPAs. They're going to tell you where you need to be cutting your budget. So you've got to be careful with how much of it. But the biggest thing, you've got to earn the trust of the people. You've got to be able to communicate, talk to the people. They've got to be able to trust you and know that if you say you're doing it, that you are doing what you say.
Yeah, transparency is huge, and I think I think everybody really liked, just speaking of government, Doge and kind of what they were doing there. They were really
Yep.
dissecting the budget. They were really looking through everything, seeing where every dollar was spent, seeing a lot of the misuse and stuff like that. And so, what do you think, if elected, how you could help kind of guard against misuse or kind of corruption in that kind of area? Because I mean, with the budget not being I guess 100% public, or we said we can't really find the whole thing everywhere. That kind of throws up a red flag. I mean, would
hmm
you think would you be open to kind of having that out there? Obviously, with some of those things, I agree with you. Having certain perils and stuff, kind of not just out in the open. And you do kind of open yourself up to, like you said, people criticizing everything. But do you think that it should be kind of open?
I do. I think it should be. I think the people need to know where their money's going. And I don't know without talking to attorneys how much what the legal sides of all that is, as far as the legislature, and because I know a lot of that comes from state government. But I think as much as possible, it should be available for the general public to know where their money's going.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, government has no money. That's one thing I always get upset about from a state and a federal level when people talk about, well, the government will pay for that. The government does not have money. The money
Mhm.
they have is my money. It's your money.
Yeah, that's right. Um, it's interesting whenever we get into that. We start to kind of assume that it's just it's money we've given up, and then the government or the county or the state has kind of started to use. Speaking of how it's used, a big criticism I know, especially in counties like Hinds County, roads are a big issue. I think here in Rankin County, we've done a really good job. I know you said we have a good road manager. We've done a really good job at keeping things up. What is there any other infrastructure that you see that is critical that kind of needs attention, or somewhere that you would pay any kind of specific attention to as far as roads or bridges and drainage systems, things like that?
As far as the roads, like you said, the majority of the roads are in good shape. There's some that are wearing out, but that's just a part of everyday thing. And I've already talked with the road manager about a couple of them in specifics, and he's already told me that they were on the calendar for X dates or when they're coming or what circumstance he was waiting on to do that. Bridges, I do know they're looking at one right now that they're going to have to do something with. It's, I believe it's in District 3 that they're looking at right now that I heard at the last board meeting I went to that they discovered there were some issues with it and and they're going to have to work on it. We do have some issues still with some drainage issues, some runoff. Of course, Mill Creek and Castle Woods was completely redone a couple of years ago. There's some things that concern me about that with what they've done or not done with some maintenance to make sure that it doesn't grow back up and end up with the same problem 5 years from now that we had before they did it 2 years ago. Running through Mill Creek, there's still some issues there. Same thing with some maintenance that they've gone in and did a lot of work, but they've still got some issues that have to be looked at on the maintenance side. That anytime we build anything new in the way of new development, subdivisions that everybody's wanting to move to, you're gonna have drainage issues because stormwater is going to be there, and it's not going to be able to go where it used to go if you build 20 houses on 10 acres. Now all of a sudden, where that water used to go, it can't go anymore. So we've got to be
Mhm.
able to watch those things and make sure. I already met with an engineering firm that does a lot of work for Rankin County. Did that, I guess, 6 weeks ago. That was before the November general election. Sat in their office about an hour, hour and a half, and them showing me some charts and some studies that they've been doing on some tributaries and creeks and stuff that run through Rankin County and eventually end up either the Pearl River or the Ross Barnett Reservoir, and the studies they're doing and how we make sure we get the water to those and then keep moving and the flow is there through those to get it to the reservoir or the river without causing backups. And so those are the things that we just got to be on top of. And as I say, I'm not necessarily the smartest guy in the room, but I want to surround myself with the guys that are and make sure that we're getting the right answers to make the right decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say, I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and that's very wise of you to want to do that. Speaking of development, Rankin County is growing, but also it's full of a lot of room for growth. But with you have strong communities, the churches, and a lot of local involvement. What do you have a vision kind of for land use and the development in Rankin County?
I do, and I like economic development. I want to see it grow. I don't really want to see industrial growth come into, especially District 2 in Rankin County. Of course, most of the time, your big industrial plants, things like that, they want to be on main highways, thoroughfares, railroads, I-20, I-55 corridor. Of course, we've got industrial parks in Brandon and got another one over towards Pelahatchie. And I think that's where you need to keep that type development. What I'm looking at in Rankin County, especially in District 2, is I want to keep the country feel, the neighborhood feel, the laid back atmosphere. The reason people move to the reservoir. I live in Castlewoods. Castlewoods is a huge neighborhood, but it's a great neighborhood for the most part. Every neighborhood's got their own little issues, but it's a great area to live. And Rankin County, especially in the northern parts of District 2 on the other side of the reservoir from here, there's a lot of opportunity for growth there, but I don't want it to be overbuilt. I don't want it to be, I don't want, I hate the clear cut of trees when they want to put in a subdivision. And that'd be one thing I'll be asking developers that, hey, do you have to clear cut every tree? Can you not leave some trees? I've got a couple of great big oak trees in my backyard and I love it. Uh, so now most of the time they don't because it's easier to go in and build house sites if you don't have anything there but dirt. And I get that they're trying to make money and I want them to make money. But at the same time, we've got to protect the way of life, the atmosphere, the look that we have. Of a lot of people who move to Rankin County feel like, hey, we're out in the country again. And in essence, you are, but you're 10 minutes away from Lakeland Drive where you've got everything you want.
No, you're right. It's definitely I agree with you. I don't think a lot of industrial development would be too great. And it would just, I don't know. I kind of like the country feel of it, but I also like that you can drive 10 minutes down the road, like you said, and you're kind of around everything. And especially everything is kind of moving, towards that Holly Bush area. And I know when I was working out that way, everything's just kind of starting to grow that way. So you're starting to see that. So I think it's important because it can easily turn into just, big nothing but industrial use, which is, could be good, in a way, but like you said, I don't think it's going to attract people and then, to want to move out there. And I think that kind of just taps in a little bit to, the role of the government and kind of how it functions and saying, okay, these are the things that we want here and these are the things that we don't want here. And everybody wants something different and you're not going to be able to please everybody. What role do you think, county government should play though in kind of protecting those rights and freedoms as far as the development and land and just and overall just your kind of rights? I mean, what kind of switch gears here a little bit?
Well, one, I think the government should stay out of people's business as much as possible. I mean, I don't like government overreach. I like smaller government, less government, and let people have their property. We had there's still quite a bit of farmland in the northwest part of Rankin County, in District 2, especially across 25 into District 4. There's a lot of farmland still there, and I want to protect that farmland for the farmers. I grew up on a farm in the Mississippi Delta and elementary and middle school. And my wife grew up on a farm up in the north part of the Delta in Quitman County. And uh, the farmer is important. And I've got some friends that are farmers, and I'd like to see them be able to do what they want to do with their land, farm their land. Without having big subdivisions come in across the street from them and then start complaining about a cotton picker or a combine, something doing all the work they have to do and going up and down the roads. So I think we've got to be careful with that. I do know there's a lot of land in Rankin County owned by developers and wanting to develop, and I've got no problem with that. But I just want to be sensitive to the neighbors, want to listen to the neighbors, and find out what they want. And especially before we make any zoning changes, they've got a good plan set up with the Central Mississippi Planning Development District of zoning and everything laid out for quite a long time into the future. And then most of the time, with the supervisors are coming in now, is when somebody's applying for a zoning change or a different use of that land that they want to make an exception for an ordinance or a conditional use request, something like that. And I think we've got to be careful in those of making sure that we're listening to the concerns of the neighbors that it will affect, and not just the big money of the developer that's wanting to put it in.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely, government I think exists to protect, that individual freedom, not necessarily manage, every aspect of life. How do you view the relationship, between individual liberty per se and personal responsibility, and then government authority on the county level?
I think the personal responsibility is, and the word responsibility to me is a key word that we've pretty much lost in our society today. Is nobody wants to take responsibility for their own actions and the things that they do. And I think if you're a landowner, a property owner, yes, it's your property, it's your land, but you have a responsibility to make sure that land or that property, your house, uh, doesn't adversely affect your neighbor's property as well. And that's where sometimes I've been in the board meetings where people have come in and complaining about nuisance property, where there's old broke down cars all over yards and stuff like that, and the neighbors don't like it. And so I think we have a responsibility there to take care of our own. But for somebody that doesn't, then sometimes the government has to step in and say, hey, look, you're not taking care of your property the way it should be. And you've got neighbors. Now, if you've got 25 acres and you got the back 40, so to speak, or the back part of that you want to have whatever you want on it, as long as it's not a environmental hazard or something like that, and no neighbors, then that's yours. But other than that, I think, especially in neighborhoods and small and subdivisions where houses are closer together, you've got to take responsibility yourself. And sometimes, unfortunately, the government has to step in.
Mhm.
I've seen way too many pictures and been by them myself just in the last 5 months that people don't do what they're not taking responsibility.
Yeah, I know that's we've had some issues here. I wouldn't say issues, but just, some people kind of complain about, maybe the city ordinances or them getting involved with, things like grass being cut or junk out in the yard. And I agree with you. I think that, that individual responsibility and the personal responsibility, if you will, just has to be there because, like you said, it affects property values. It affects all kinds of things, and just the overall, morale of the community and the neighborhood, as well as aesthetics of it. Um, and then I think that just kind of just ties into just kind of the values that Rankin County has. I mean, people are really proud of what they have, like you said, whether it's a farm, whether it's just a small family with a house. People are looking to Rankin County. I think it's the best place to live in the world, and I think you would agree there too that it's something special, and we have to have folks that are really concerned with the growth in regards to growing it, like you were saying, but not in a big, fast, super fast way. And I know some people would say, a lot of places in Rankin County are kind of behind on some things. But I think we've really been pacing it at a good pace. But also, it's kind of time for some new ideas and some people to kind of step in and say, hey, look, we're not only going to protect these things, but we're also going to start moving things in a different way. Um, so we'll jump into something else here. What moral or ethical principles do you think would guide you in political office?
Uh, well, it's I guess not moral, but really all of it to me stems from the Bible and my Christian beliefs. Our moralities, our ethics, I think, are all based in biblical principle. Uh, I grew up that your word is your bond. If you say something, you do it. Regardless, if something circumstances come up that you can't, you go explain why and try to take responsibility for that. But that's my main thing. Doing to others as you would have them doing to you, the golden rule. Just try to treat people fairly. Uh, I've I consider myself a pretty strong conservative when it comes to morality, when it comes to ethics. Is you have to hold yourself, especially I think in an elected position. It's kind of like serving as a deacon, serving as an elder in the church. You're held to a higher standard, and so ethically, you've got to be above and beyond. Uh, and try to make sure that you're not doing anything that even would be seem to be out of order. And so you just held to a little higher standard, I think.
Yeah, and that's definitely our communities. You know, strong families, moral clarity. I think people look to that, and that's part of what we're really trying to find. I think nowadays is those people that aren't just talking about it but are living it. And I was talking to some folks last night about it. I said, you know what, I've known Derrel for a long time. I've followed him, and kind of on social media and just knowing him personally, and it's, you can tell when people are really true to what they're saying, and not just saying it but actually living it out. And I think that's super important. So your faith is obviously important to you, your worldview is obviously important to you. How does that influence decisions you make, and how would that influence policy and law whenever you're dealing with governance?
I think really the biblical principles and what I've tried to live my life by for the last long time is it guides your thought processes. It's kind of like Paul, even in Romans, where he talks about the whole line. I never can quote it, but I know what to do, and I still do it, and I know what not to do, but I still don't do what I'm supposed to do, and all of that.
Mm,
I think we always find ourselves in that, but I think everything we do as a Christian, your want to changes when you become a Christian. Uh, your desires change. We start asking for the right things, looking for the right things, doing the right things. We still make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. If you don't believe me, ask my wife. But that's just
mm,
part of life and growing. But I think our work to do is we really dig deeper and to know what's going on for discernment to try to make sure that we are making the right decision on things that's going to come up with me, whether it be the nuisance properties, whether it be developments, rezoning, conditional use requests, whether it be just fielding a complaint from a taxpayer, a citizen that calls with a problem that they don't know what to deal with. The number one thing I need to do with that is listen to their problems, is to be present. Because a lot of times people don't necessarily expect you to be able to fix it, but they want to be heard.
mhm.
And I think that's the main thing I've got to be able to do, and a supervisor should do, is to be there for them, to listen, to be heard, and then if something can be done, figure out how you can make it work. Uh, but it's got to fit into the big picture. It can't take theirs and exclude it, everything else around. But it's got to be fitting in with everything.
Yeah, and you kind of hit on it a minute ago, and I mean, when you run for office, it's a sense of accountability. I mean, you're putting yourself out there. Everybody's going to be looking at you. Everybody's going to be critiquing you twice as hard, really looking at all the decisions you make, and so that you not only got to be talking it, but you got to be walking it. And again, I commend you for that, because some people look at it for for personal gain or popularity, for whatever other reason other than a an act of service, and I think that's what it is. So, and you said listening to your constituents and listening to the people, how would you stay connected to citizens? Because I know a lot of people think that once you get elected, they kind of forget about you, and then they don't hear from you for another 4 years. What's something that you think you could do to kind of stay connected to folks once you get in there?
One of the things that I want to do is one is be out amongst the people all the time. I'll be active in every event going on. Every time there's a homeowners association meeting, I want to be there. PRV board meetings, uh, neighborhood groups. I want to be as involved as I can in everything going on. Breakfast clubs at restaurants, things like that. It's amazing what you can find out sitting at Pelahatchie Bay Trading Post at a breakfast for an hour, hour and a half, and listening to people and talking to people. But things like that, to number one, to stay out and be available. I would also love to figure out a way, and I know people are extremely busy these days. It's amazing with kids going everywhere doing things through all of our youth programs. But I'd love to be able to have some sort of, for the lack of a better word, town hall meeting on a periodic basis to where, and do it at a couple of different locations where we can be available, and just put myself out there for people to come and express concerns, desires, kind of like I would do a meet and greet running for office. Do it as a meet and greet, just as a, hey, come meet me, come talk to me, come express your concerns. Let me take some notes. I may not have answers. I will if I can, but mainly take some notes and find out what I can do uh, to figure out what people are needing and what they're wanting. But that's the thing that I feel like I can do a lot, being as I don't have full time job, as I retired in December, just doing my little sports at Northwest Rankin, that I can be available to people most any time to meet, to talk, and to discuss issues.
Yeah, that's great. That's I know when I ran for alderman, that was kind of one of the things that I said. I was like, hey, look, even after this, I just want to be out there and have regular monthly district meetings, where we just bring everybody in. And it's just, if anything, I mean, hopefully we'd be getting together for coffee and nobody would have anything to really bring up. But I'm sure there would be. But I mean, you're already out there. You're already active in the community. You've been involved. You've already created that availability. People know how to reach you. People know they're going to see you. So I mean, you're already like, hey, I'm already out here. I might as well be out here serving in a bigger capacity. So
Right.
I think that creates even more, credibility towards what you're trying to do and how that works. And then saying, hey, not only that, but I'm going to take it a step forward and sit down with people, every quarter, every month, or whatever it is, to listen. It is huge because now it's like, hey, call your congressman or your senator, and you may, get a machine or a secretary. And don't get me wrong, so a lot of them are at these breakfast clubs and these meetings, and you're right, that is a great way to connect with people, and I encourage people to go to these things because a lot of these folks are there, um, and that's where you can really create even more availability to you. So, in a long term vision, where do you see our county and let's just say 5 to 10 years if you are elected?
Kind of interesting because at our deacons meeting last month before last, I've been at First Baptist Fannin for the last little over 10 years. Served as a deacon there, rolled off, going back on this January. We've experienced tremendous growth. We built a new building. We actually built it through COVID, opened it in 21. But we're running out of space, especially in our children's area. We've been tracking numbers of attendance and where our growth is really coming, and it's really coming strong in our children's area. We're running out of room. So we looked at it, and we're, in fact, in January, we're fixing to start construction of a new parking lot around part of the perimeter of our church. And we said, well, we've got enough parking now. Some people ask, why do we need to build a new parking lot? Well, to build another building, we've got to be able to get equipment on, and equipment needs to sit in a parking lot. We can't give up those parking places.
Mm.
So we're going to do that, and then we'll start looking at some point in the next couple of years to start constructing a new children's wing there. All of that being said, we came to that conclusion with looking at studies that we got, and I don't, did I just lose you? There we go.
Got it.
Doing
Oh,
some studies. The Mississippi Baptist Convention was able to help us with some growth studies, and we did a 10-mile radius around our church. And roughly right now, that 10-mile radius gives a population of about 125,000 people. And in the next 10 years, that's going to be over 135,000 people. So with that growth, we said we've got to be prepared for that. And we need to do the same thing in the county. We need to look at where the growth is, how we do that. One of the biggest things we're going to have a challenge with, and what's already there, is Pisgah School District. Rankin County schools are excellent. They're an A-rated school. All the schools in the county are excellent. Northwest Rankin, which is I'm the closest to, continues to excel in everything and has so much to offer the students. Built a new building in Rankin County for Northwest Rankin, moved in 6 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. But Pisgah is overcrowded now. And that's where a lot of growth is coming in, is that northern part of the county. There's still so much of it is undeveloped. People like to get out there and have that country feel. But we've got to be careful in how much we do too fast and cause a big burden on our school. I've already talked with Shane Sanders, the school superintendent, and been in some meetings where he's been there and looking at things that we've got to start working on and doing. I've already talked to two of the school board members about those kind of things to try to do what the supervisors can do to help and manage the growth in an area, but also at the same time make sure we've got our schools able to keep up and be prepared for that growth when it gets there.
mm. Yeah, like we said, it is definitely growing that way. And I mean, I think you just kind of hit on it. My next question was kind of like, if what are the biggest challenges? And I think it would be, the growth, which is a good thing, So you got a friend there.
Yep. Our only child, that's Buddy. Hey, Buddy. He's got to make himself known.
There you
But
go.
yeah, those will be some challenges, but those are the good kind. Those are just growing pains that you just have to
Hmm.
work through. but the key to it is being aware of what's coming, and then try to plan accordingly to make sure that it works.
Yeah, speaking of the schools, I know I got this in here. Um, that school choice is obviously kind of a big thing. What's your kind of, I don't want to say stance on that, but what do you feel is kind of some pros and kind of some cons on that? Just real quick.
And of course, obviously, Rankin County School District is 100% against it, from a district and all the admin and teachers in the schools. For me, I've had mixed feelings on it. I get the point of the school district and what they're saying, uh, that if you bring in, a lot of times there are some students, yes, in these failing school districts that are good students and will be good students, and regardless where they go to school, they could help there and they could be better than maybe what the opportunity they've got where they are. But at the same time, if you have a huge influx, say for instance from Hinds County, from JPS into Rankin County, what will it do to our education quality in Rankin County? We've got to be careful with that, especially where there's already overcrowded areas. You've got to be careful. You've got to talk about the money. uh, they talk about the House is talking about it, big pushing hard. Mississippi House and Senate, that roughly $7,000 is what would follow that student to the whatever school he's going to. Well, in Rankin County, they're spending roughly $13,000 per student, and I've heard some people. So where's the difference that money's coming in? I heard somebody say about that not too long ago. Well, how much of that 13,000 is waste on admin and things like that? Uh, Good question, and I don't have the answers to that part. But I think we got to be careful with that to make sure that, uh, if we're opening up our schools to people outside of Rankin County, the funding is there, that we maintain our education quality, because I don't want to see it watered down because of what comes in. Because people move to Rankin County, Madison County, Clinton Public Schools, Pearl Public School District, because of the quality of education their kids are getting. That's why they're not moving into the city of Jackson, is because of the school systems. That's why they're not moving into the city of Canton, because of the school systems. So we've got to protect that. Uh, I get it from a statewide. There may be a lot of advantages to kids being able to go to different districts, but I do know a lot of your top districts, Tupelo School District, I know, is not in favor of it at all. From an athletic standpoint, is something else that bothers me is, are we going to see public school coaches go recruit athletes from wherever to come to their programs and build these powerhouse athletic programs? Because we're already getting pressure on coaches to win games, just like you see in college and pros. And I don't want to see that happen in high school. Uh, I think it's watered down and messing up our college sports with the NIL and with the portal and with some of these colleges. Who knows what Lane Kiffin is doing? As we've been talking about that all week. But I don't want to see the athletic programs diminish, because all of a sudden now it's wide open on the schools and the coaches go recruit and say, well, maybe my coach won't. Well, if the rest of the coaches are, he'll have to keep his job. So those are some concerns I have. I don't have the answers, but those are some concerns I've got with opening up to school choice to go wherever they want to go.
Yeah, no, I definitely see both sides. Both sides of the coin. I agree. I think there's some concerns there. I think it needs to be laid out, and I think there needs to be, just like there's not a one size fits all, educational curriculum for students. I don't think there should be, anyways. I don't think that the school choice argument can necessarily be a one size fits all for every school too. I think there
Right.
ought to be options for schools to be able to opt in. I think there are concerns. I do believe that a lot of school districts are top heavy in administration. I think that money could be spent differently. I also believe that school boards should be elected, not appointed. But I'd like to know where you kind of stand on that. Not personally, but I'd like to know who's being put in these positions, just because it kind of matters, and that'll tell you a lot more about how the schools. I mean, do you have fiscal conservatives on your school board, or do you have
Right.
not so much? So how do you balance
Well,
moral convictions?
yeah, I know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know in Rankin County School District, the school board members are elected, and then they interview and hire a superintendent. I know in Pearl Public Schools, the board members are appointed.
Mm-hmm.
by the mayor and board of aldermen, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there are pros and cons to that. I like the way we've got it in the county, and I like the fact they've gone to not an elected superintendent, that it is a hired superintendent that's interviewed, and they put out searches when they hire a new superintendent, and to find the best qualified person. Too many times in an election, unfortunately, especially when it comes to education, you may get somebody that's not the most qualified person just because they're popular.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to be careful with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my next thing is just kind of, and it ties back to that. How do you balance moral convictions and constitutional obligations when making those kinds of decisions?
Well, I think obviously I don't want to break the law, so I've got to make sure that with this within what the Constitution says, and I'm not being up on charges and being sued. But at the same time, uh, morality's got to be key for me. It's the stuff that when you look at a lot of the issues going on in our society today with uh, what sex somebody's going to be and choosing and things like that, and when you're doing how you treat people, and just our morals are decaying so much in our society, and I don't want to be there. That's not what I am. It's not who I'm about. So other than make sure I stay within the law, but again, if the law is telling me that, like, if there was a law passed dealing with morality that I totally disagree with, then I'd have to figure out a way to fight that. Uh, but my moral compass has got to stay true north in order for me to sleep good at night.
Yeah, absolutely. We're slowly and slowly going into a crazier world. Um, and I think we have to really pay attention to that. What do you believe local government's role, and I mean especially where it should step aside for individuals and families? I know that's kind of one of the school choice arguments is these people and these parents should have that ability, but especially in faith-based communities, where do you think government should kind of step aside or intervene, I guess, when it comes to those types of things?
I think government should stay out of it as much as possible. I think individual rights. I mean, that's what the founding fathers, while we're here, is individual rights, and we've got strong churches in Rankin County. That's one of the things I look at when it comes to natural disasters. I think sometimes, and we've seen issues and heard about issues with FEMA and things going on from a national level. One of the things I'm liking about what President Trump's trying to do with that is not necessarily abolishing FEMA, but taking the control away from FEMA and leaving it with the state and the local government, the local area, because that's who knows the best. Uh, and so the funding still needs to be there, uh, but you can't have people from Washington D.C. coming to the Mississippi Gulf Coast and saying how you do things. Same thing within the local county. Uh, there are a lot of stuff that goes on in the schools and in the churches that could help people that are in need, that the government can just stay out of it and basically facilitate or help people get it done, just to kind of come along beside. But too many times we try to get government controls on everything. Now we need obviously EMS, we need emergency responders, we need all of that. Those are the people trained to do it, and that technically, I guess, is part of the government. We need emergency operations when things happen to make sure we're safe and all. But we can't get into people's business too much with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we said this a minute ago, but just, government exists, to protect those freedoms and not necessarily, manage every aspect of life. And I think power belongs, closest to the people from the local, state, and then the federal level. And I think we see a lot of that with our current administration, just in kind of trying to turn a lot of those things over and, giving it back to the states, which is great. I agree with that. I think that we know best what's for Mississippi here in Mississippi, and you don't need an organization or administration or bureaucracy, department that's, thousands of miles away, trying to tell you what's best, right here in Rankin County. And I think that's why local elections are so important and why it matters about having, really good, people of integrity and of good stewardship that are taking care of things like that. That your neighbor, is in office and he's going to be looking out for the same things that you're concerned with, as opposed to somebody, like I said, hundreds of thousands of miles away. I think that's super important. Um, what speaking of that, how would you handle situations, where doing the right thing isn't necessarily the popular thing?
uh, just have thick skin. I don't have a problem being ridiculed. In fact, I had somebody tell me about it yesterday about some of the things I say on a football broadcast, a play-by-play, when sometimes I'll critique our own coach and wonder why he did that, or a player that made a bad play. And, you know, some people say, well, they're your kids. Why are you doing that? Well, I call a spade a spade. They made a mistake. You got to call them on it. We've got to, I think too many times, and we're trying to please people at the expense of our own conscience and our own beliefs. And that's not what I'm about. I mean, there was a time in my life that, yeah, I wanted to do everything I could to make everybody like me. And that's not the way to go. You got to be yourself. You got to be who you are. And hopefully that who you are is a good person. You've got good, strong moral convictions, mind centered in the Bible and centered in my faith in God. And so beyond that, I am who I am. I'm going to make the decisions I make. I've had a number of meetings with people in this campaign that we would sit for a long time and talk. And the number one I would tell them and leave with them is I'll listen to your concerns completely. But I'll tell you this, you're not always going to like my answer. And I'm okay with that because I'm going to make the best decision I think at the time. Will I always make the right one? No. I'll make a mistake, but I'll stand by that too and I'll own up to it if that's the case. You talked about the availability. Just last week, I had a gentleman call me that I'd never met before. I'm not even sure how he got my phone number. May have found it on a card somewhere, and just said, "Hey, I know you're running for office, and I live in your district. I'd like to meet you and talk to you." I said, "Okay, fine. I got some time this afternoon." He ended up. We had lunch together that day. And for about 2 hours, I sat and listened to him and all of his issues, all of his things going on. And in the end, I just told him, I said, I'm not going to make you any promises, but I'll be glad to listen. And I'll find out if I'm elected. And whether you like my answer or not, I'll bring you back the answer, even if it's no. And he appreciated that. He respected that. And that's kind of who I am.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that run for office, will say, just what people want to hear. And I respect that about you. You've always shot it straight. I think whenever you're doing broadcasting, you really have to. It'd be kind of obvious if you're too biased against a team that's not doing very well. But it's good and it's important that you're being honest and speaking that with integrity as well, because I mean Proverbs says whoever walks with integrity walks securely. It's a lot easier to keep up with things whenever you're not
Yep.
telling lies. um the Bible teaches stewardship.
You
How
know,
would you
one thing,
apply that? Excuse me.
go ahead.
I was just going to say,
I was just going
how,
to say
how would you
along that,
apply? Go
say
ahead, you
again.
cut out.
Yeah, well, I was just going to follow up with that real quick. A lot of times, politicians, unfortunately, are answering things and doing things with one thing in mind, and that's to get reelected.
Mm.
And that's what I don't ever want to be accused of. I'm going to serve. It's a 2 year term that I'm serving to finish out Scott's. So in 18 months, I'll start running again for a 4 year term. And at that point, people will reelect me because of the job I've done, period. I'm gonna be shoot straight. I'm gonna be honest. And if they choose to reelect me, that's great. I'll serve another 4 years. But I'm not gonna answer and bow down and do things with the purpose of getting reelected. If they choose not to, I'm fine with that too. I don't think I personally don't think that elected officials should be in it for life. I think it ought to be uh, a temporary position that you hold.
So we can say they support term limits then.
Yes,
Well, yeah,
I do support term limits.
it's definitely refreshing to hear that. I agree with you. I think a lot of folks, I couldn't imagine being in Congress or Senate for 40 or 50 years. I just couldn't imagine how you would stay in touch. And it's a job of service, and we all have different. I was thinking about this the other day. We all have things that come up in life in different seasons, and and don't get me wrong, there's some people that you probably think, man, they've done such a great job. They should, but I don't think they should be there forever. Because I don't think that's healthy. I think there's there needs to be a refresh, of kind of ideas. But we have to vet these people, and we have to make sure that we're not just electing, the same old thought process or something that's not of what we believe to be true conservative principles. Because I think to keep Mississippi and to keep Rankin County the way it is, we really have to pay attention. I know we're seeing that all over the country right now. Is some pretty dangerous things happening in some of these big cities, and it really matters, especially on the local level, who we're bringing into office and who we're electing. Because, like I said, Jesus calls leaders to serve, not dominate, and it's not, and it's I think whenever you're in office for 40 to 50 years, it becomes kind of that thing, like you're looking to get reelected, and you're not really looking at what the servant's heart is. Um, so how would you ensure that, decisions that you make serve the people rather than just expand, your political power per se?
Well, the main thing is what you just said is and talked about Jesus. What he said, Jesus said, "I came to serve, not to be served." When he washed the disciples' feet, and I think that's the main thing. That if I'm not making decisions based on what I think's best for me, but what I think's best for you, then I've done my job as a supervisor. And the only way to know that is to be constantly in contact with the people and listening to the concerns and making decisions based on what I feel is best for the people that it will affect, whether it adversely affects me or not from my political career doesn't matter because I don't want another career. I'm not running for this to have another career. I'm doing this to help the people, and so my interest, as far as personally, and my future in politics has nothing to do with it. I have no higher motives or anything for being in office, just to serve the people of District 2 in Rankin County.
Yeah, it's certainly a commitment to truth, as we could say. It's to ensure that truth and not political pressure is guiding your actions, and you're staying grounded in truth and staying grounded, especially in a political world where compromise is really expected. People are expecting just to kind of go along to get along with the status quo, and that's kind of becomes what's popular with a lot of these folks, and doing the right thing kind of becomes unpopular. I think that's a lot of what we see, especially on our federal level. It gets so big and so expanded, that people just get swallowed up. So that's why I think these local elections are super important. So we'll jump into a little bit about just protecting individual rights, because again, that's something that's really close to home here. Freedom's a biblical principle. How would you defend rights and freedoms of citizens in your county? I know, because especially when we see a lot of these radical ideas, and even some of these religions that are kind of starting to creep in the United States. How would you how what can a supervisor do to kind of help protect those rights and freedoms here in Rankin County?
As far the supervisors don't pass laws, so there's not a whole lot we can do to prohibit certain things like that, other than when it infringes on somebody else's property rights or something. Then that's where supervisors can come in. I think the biggest thing we can do is support our law enforcement and hold them accountable and making sure they're doing the job they're supposed to do to protect the freedoms of the people. Again, and freedom has become a buzzword, and First Amendment rights has become a buzzword, but we've taken way out of context to what the freedom really is. Yes, I have the freedom of speech, but it doesn't go so far as we used to always say, except you can't holler fire in a crowded theater. We've taken all of that out of context. Uh, but I think our freedoms are our freedoms until it inhibits or hurts someone else. And that's where we've got to guard that. Like I said, other than as far as the supervisor is concerned, from my knowledge of it, there's not a lot I can do directly that would affect that other than protecting property rights if somebody's doing something that would affect somebody else's freedom on their property, or If somebody's doing something on their property that they shouldn't be doing, then obviously that's where our law enforcement comes in. Uh, but that'd be one of the things that I guess I just have to see and see what that actually is.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. And here's kind of what I see is what could be done is just that, being so close to the people in a local election, like we said, these are people that you see, pretty constantly, and regularly, that you kind of represent them so close that, you let's just say you represent, how many people are in your district exactly, or ish.
Uh, Probably, well, there's 21,000 registered voters. I got that number. I haven't looked at the total population, but probably going to be close to 60,000 or so.
So we'll just use it. We'll use that number. We'll just say 60,000. That's 60,000 people essentially that you represent directly. And then on a bigger scale, you see congressmen and senators. I think that that's why that local government is so important, because those are the people that are closest to you. Those are the people that will represent you the best, the ones that live in your neighborhood, in your cities, in your communities, that understand, that are dealing with a lot of the same things. So whenever you see these, I want to say, I guess, any kind of government overreach, it's a lot easier to prevent. I think that's why it's important to me to know, who my aldermen are and who my mayor is, because I know what those people are like, and I know that they're not going to stand for that. So if something starts to come down, from the top to the city level, I can say, well, they're not going to put up with that, and I can depend on them. And then the
Right.
relationship that they have with law enforcement, that they're also not going to put up with it, and then that law enforcement, whether it's the local PD or the sheriff's department, are all like-minded people, that are going to help, protect that from, any kind of government overreach. I know that, like I said, that's one of those things that I always say, we're really lucky to live in a state like Mississippi, because from mayors to state representatives to the governor, everybody's pretty close. And I mean, I feel like I could say, we know the governor on a personal level, and a lot of people can probably say that, whether you agree with them or not. You kind of can feel at ease knowing that, we're not going to let that kind of stuff happen, around here, and that the closer you are to those people, and the more that you're paying attention to who's in office on your local level, the more that they can hold each other accountable, to the next level. um, a lot of people get super concerned or involved with federal elections, which are important. But, once those people are there, you're not going to feel a lot of those, a lot of that policy for a year or two, and you're probably not going to see them as much either. So I think that's why, paying attention what's going on at the local level is so important, especially in these supervisor positions. Is very important, because I mean, you like you said, 60,000 people, 20,000 registered voters. It's a lot of people to be representing. Um, Jumping into the next thing, human
One
nature
of the
and
things,
power. Go ahead.
one thing I was just going to say with that, and that's one of the things I'm excited about being able to do it as a retired person, is I've got the time to be there. District 2 is unique in a lot of the counties and the districts in Rankin County even. There's only a very small portion, about 20% of the population of District 2 is an incorporated area. The rest of it is in unincorporated areas with no board of aldermen, no mayor. So their primary point of contact is their county supervisor. And so that's where it's
Hmm.
important. That's why all of these subdivisions that have HOAs, I want to be meeting those boards and meeting those people and attending those meetings to where they can see that I'm involved, that I'm plugged in, that I'm available, to where when they've got a concern that the HOA needs help on, or the neighborhood without an HOA, there's some there's a group of ladies that meet in every subdivision just about and has coffee once a month. I want to find those groups and meet with them, get to know them, let them get to know me for just that reason. So one, we can see what's coming down, and they'll know me and know that I'm there to have their back.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say that, Scripture teaches us, and I think we talked about this, that just, human nature is fallen. We live in a world that's just getting more and more blurred by the lines, and just kind of what's going on from some of the things that we're seeing in our schools, to the things we see on social media, to even just some of the things that we see in government, where there's some mistrust, and like you said, we're all human. We're gonna mess up. We mess up daily, but how could you help guard against corruption or favoritism or misuse of power?
Uh, the main thing you talking about for me myself.
Well, I mean, not just yourself. I think we talked about that, but when you see things, going on around you, how could you help guard against that, as far as, just what you would say to somebody, or any action that you could take?
Well, and the Bible teaches how to deal with people that are doing things wrong, or doing something wrong. Is you go straight to that person first, and in love try to help them straighten it out. If that doesn't work, you go to them with another brother and try to get it fixed, and then you go to an authority figure, whatever you've got to do. But I think the key to that is, like you said, and we just talked about, is constantly being out there where people see you and know you, where I see people and I know people, and if something is like, if something's being done, like from a business or a government agency or something that I don't feel is right, then I've just got to find the right people to talk to correct it, or either help me understand what I'm not seeing correctly. Uh, it's got, we can't overlook it. I guess my thing, the whole phrase, if you see something, say something. Too many times, and this is where conservatives have messed up. Is so many times we're the silent majority. We sit back and just listen and don't ever say anything, or we see something, we don't ever say anything. Our churches, yeah, we go to church and our preacher gives us a great sermon on how we're supposed to live in biblical principles, but then we go back into the workplace and we just forget everything we just heard on Sunday. And so I think as a society, and especially as conservatives, especially as Christians, uh, we've got to stand up. And when we see things that aren't right, we've got to do it the right way. You don't want to push somebody away, but at the same time, you can't condone the behavior that's no good. You've got to figure out how to get through to it in love. Uh, Charlie Kirk, that's what he was all about. He didn't bend his principles whatsoever. And one of the neatest things I love about him is when he would do his meetings and his events, rallies, and he would let anybody that wanted to come to that microphone and talk about whatever they wanted to talk about. But when he came back, he didn't come back to them with political reasoning or conservative reasoning. He came back to them with biblical reasoning and quoted scripture as to why whatever lifestyle or whatever thing they were doing was harmful. And I think we in society these days are going to have to step up, and we got to quit being the silent majority.
Yeah, I think you've heard, complacency is complicity, and I think we see a lot of that, and I think that's even where, even um, a lot of people that say they're Christian have kind of fallen complacent to that, unfortunately, and part of what we're trying to bring out is helping find these people that want to put principles above politics, because like you said, I think that's where you're going to connect more with people. And one of the things I was going to ask is, what accountability measures should leaders put around themselves. And I think, like you said, going about it in love and really trying to connect with people, and having people around you that are going to hold you accountable. I know for me, that's one of the biggest things that I use is surrounding myself with people that are going to hold me accountable, mentors that I can learn from, and people that'll kind of shoot you straight and tell you what's going on. So you have all the right things going for you and all the right ideas, as far as how you could keep that going, because it's really hard, and I think it's a conviction thing. It's one of those things where when people feel convicted, most of the time they change their ways or they get worse. And I think it's pretty obvious whenever they get worse, and I think it's pretty obvious whenever they get better, or at least they're trying to change. So that that's really important, especially of the role of faith in public office. I think is standing true in conviction and standing true to principles, and using those biblical principles to kind of to lead the way that you're serving, and not just the way you're making policy, or you're trying to push ideas on people. I think for so long, I know, I've, done some work in politics where you're just trying to convince somebody of one side or the other, or one way or the other. And I've met with some people here recently, some organizations that we're kind of working with that are, they're having a lot of trouble connecting with people. And I'm like, do you ever wonder why? And it's probably because, we're constantly, with a megaphone, just trying to shout our ideas, and why we're right, or why it's
Right.
supposed to be this way, as opposed to using those that worldview of, hey, look, let's connect on a different way. Let's find where it comes from, and then let's try to connect the dots back from that. So um and I think that's especially our younger generation is really losing sight of that, because everybody just wants to be right. Everybody wants to have a point. Everybody wants to have a viewpoint or a talking point. And so, what do you think about the next generation? How could you help, invest in the youth, and prepare future leaders in Rankin County?
I think that's the probably the most important thing we as adults, and especially I'll go ahead and call myself senior adults, that we've got to do is we've got to invest in the youth. Unfortunately, we've got a young generation coming up today, with some exceptions, but uh, a lot that aren't being raised on the principles that I was raised on of hard work. Your word is your bond, things like that. Uh, Too much of it is being given and wanted to be given, and I think we and as leaders, or as especially in churches, we've got to invest in those kids. We got to spend time with them. That's the main thing that most everybody wants. Human nature is we want somebody to put their arm around us and let us know that we care, that they mean something. I did college ministry at Pine Lake for 9 years, and that was the biggest thing I did with them. Yeah, I taught a Sunday school class. My wife would cook for them on Sunday nights, and we'd feed 25, 35 students every Sunday night. But the biggest thing I did for them was I was present. I was a part of their life. I'd have a group of guys that would call me on a Thursday night at 9 o'clock. Hey, we're finna go to the late show. You want to go with us? And I'd go hang out with a bunch of college kids as a 40-year-old, and go to a late movie, then go sit at Krispy Kreme and wait on the light to come on. Uh, but those young guys, I was just present. And I think that's the main thing. I do that with the sports at Northwest Rankin. I like to go to practices, especially baseball is fun for me. I'll go hang out in the dugout during practice, and I'll have the players coming over to, hey, DP, what's up? And they give me a fist bump or a high five, or, hey, did you see that catch? You see that hit? And it's just the main thing is people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And as adults, we've got to be present for these kids today. The ball fields. We've got a young boy that's a neighbor of ours that my wife and I just kind of. It's a single mom and a young boy, and he's super little kid, and he just needs somebody to stay there with him and listen to him and play ball with him and do whatever. So I think that's what not just me, but all of us as adults, we need to remember where we've come from, and we need to look at our future, because these kids that I see in the high schools right now, that's our future leaders. And if we don't invest in them and help them be who they need to be, the best. And two, I see this all the time in sports, especially. You see parents want their kids to be the next Derek Jeter or the next Brett Favre or the next superstar, Peyton Manning. But athletically, they may not have that skill. We need to encourage them to be the best person they can be within their limits. But you got to push those limits, and that's what we've got to do. We've got to get to our youth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think encouraging those values, and there is a lot going on, at home for a lot of kids that we don't know about, and then at school they are the whether they're the popular ones or the good athletes, the home life may not be as well. So I think it's I commend you for that. I think it's super important. I'm raising some little ones myself, so I'm pretty busy with them, but what we feel have been led to do is really start working with our youth, and just kind of, my biological father wasn't always there, whenever I was growing up. I had a great stepdad that raised me, but not, and I was lucky for that, but not all young guys have that, or young girls have that, or whether it's the mother or the father that's
That's right.
present there. So I think having leaders, because they are our, they're our future business people, they're our future teachers, they're our future pastors, they're our future, elected officials. And we need to be invested in them. We have to be, concerned with what's going on, not just for the things that are making them great in sports, or the obviously accolades that they may be getting for their academic achievements, but just, the people that they are. I work with anywhere from 16 to 40-year-olds, and I mean, for me, it's really about, how can I connect with these people in a way that's not just a boss, but actually, a person, and is actually, a helping hand to them. It's like, how can I help you today? Where are you, and what's going on? We have to have a vision for
Hmm.
them. We have to have a vision for our community. And I have not just elected officials, but I mean, just, I don't want to say support groups, but I mean, I guess, maybe that's what it is that's what we're trying to do, is just be an organization and a group that really focuses on teaching, the next generation, and even my age, because I mean, it took me, I'm 36, I guess almost middle aged. It took me a long time to figure this stuff out. So it's really important that I know that there's others that maybe have not figured it out. There's ones that are older than me that haven't figured it out. And thankfully, I don't think I have it figured out, but I know that, what we want to do is really, try to be a guiding light, and try to create a network, and have a place where they can come and they can hear from their elected officials. They can hear from business people. They can hear from pastors. They can hear from, Joe down the road that has a story, because all of us have a testimony, and all of us have a story to tell, that you never know who's going to connect with that. And I think whenever we're really promoting that leadership, that's community rooted in righteousness, we create stronger families, we create stronger, communities, and that's really, a big part of what we're trying to do. So I mean, I guess you could say, what you're obviously doing what you want to do, being an elected official. What role should faith-based organizations play in strengthening the county? I mean, I think we've talked about the church a little bit. Y'all's church is growing, but I mean, in your opinion, is there anything else that we could be doing, to kind of help, the youth, or the community in that regard?
I think, yeah, the outreach programs in churches, getting out in the communities, the care centers that provide the food and stuff for those that are hungry and needy, those that do, like our church, through our deacons and through some other guys that help out. Uh, we have a church member, somebody that needs something done in their yard that they're not able to do it, and we'll go pitch in and do it, or something like that. I think the churches, and I think most of our churches in Rankin County do a tremendous job of being out in the community, being active in the community. I mean, the church isn't the building; the church is the people in the building, and uh, and I think we, the church, have to just continue to be involved in everything going on, because if you're going to help the youth of today, who better than to help than a godly woman or a godly man? And that's why the church needs to be there. The youth programs, I know personally of half dozen churches just in this area that have tremendous youth programs that are reaching out to their kids. And the sad part about it is how many, in some of those churches, how many youth get dropped off by their parents on Sunday morning or Wednesday night, and the parents don't come, but that's okay. At least they're getting their kids there and they're getting exposed, and hopefully we're reaching that next generation. So yeah, but I think it's extremely important that our churches stay active in the community and doing community outreach. The events that we see, fall festivals, things like that, that the churches are doing. and you look around at those and you see so many people at those events that aren't church members of your church. They're just people in the community saw an event coming on and show up. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're working with several, not only churches but nonprofits as well, and we have a ton of groups. We say at our church that fellowship happens in circles, not in rows, and I mean it's our small groups are a big part of what we do,
Hmm.
and getting people connected. Um, from we have the youth groups to the middle age to the young adults to the small families. I mean we have a group for just about everything, and I know we've talked about a lot, but that's just kind of, some of the things that we wanted to emphasize. That's what we're trying to do is connect the dots there, and how, politics and biblical principles and all of it just kind of is supposed to meet in the middle. I think that's where a lot of it gets lost in translation. We're either talking about politics or we're talking about religion. And I think we have to understand that we have to be paying attention to who we're electing, the people that are trying to lead us, and the people that are called to serve, the people that feel like they're called to serve, and just what kind of people they are, because that allows us, like you said, it creates that conviction. Hopefully, it's created some conviction in you. I know you already got a lot of it, but we want people to know that it's one of those things that we're going to be looking out for, and we're going to be encouraging you. We're going to be praying for you. Biblical, leadership requires humility. It requires, not pride. And I think, like we said in the past, government leaders should be servants, and not rulers. And scripture emphasizes, righteousness, justice with righteousness, and not just fairness. But they have to protect freedom as well. And God designed people to be free. And also, stewardship means, wise, honest, transparent handling of resources. So it's all, interconnected. And that's what we're trying to really educate people on, as well as morality and how it matters, and the influence that leaders have, in the spiritual, not just in the spiritual direction of the community, not just the political direction of the community or development, but and then most importantly, just that strong families and, like you said, the church involvements is what strengthens the county, more than government programs. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to stay connected, and we're following that work of, like you mentioned, of kind of what Charlie Kirk was trying to do. We're just doing it more on a local Mississippi grassroots level to make sure that we're keeping the good people in, and then the ones that may not be so much, they feel like they don't need to be there. They'll kind of walk away from it. But hopefully, there's a change of heart in folks, and we're educating, like I said, the next generation, and also people our age, and older all around, to kind of have an idea of what biblical leader should be: a person of integrity, a servant leader, wise and discerning, just and fair, a faithful steward, morally grounded in scripture, defender of truth and freedom, committed to strengthening families, and like you said, helping strengthen in the next generation. So thank you for taking the time to kind of mix those lines together. I know a lot of people are kind of hesitant to do that, but I think it's important that, like I said, we know who's coming in, and who's there, and we're inviting a lot of people that are already elected officials to come on and speak as well. We got some people lined up and people that are running for office as well. So thank you for doing this, because like I said, it means a lot to me, and I know it's going to mean a lot to the people that you're wanting to serve and that you're wanting to represent in District 2. So we look forward to Tuesday. We're excited for you. We'll be praying for you, and if there's anything else you'd like to put out there, we'll give you the floor for a few minutes.
You're breaking up real bad, Chris. Yeah, breaking up real bad. I didn't catch most of that last part.
Sorry, no, I was just saying I appreciate you coming on, and being able to talk about, the politics, and being able to talk about the religion, and just kind of putting it all together. Like I said, we have to make sure that we're paying attention to who's trying to come in and serve, and if there's anything else you want to say to the folks at District 2 and Rankin County, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to thank you for having me on. I appreciate the time tonight to get a chance just to visit with you. So again, I've known you for a number of years now. I love what you're doing. I love what you're a part of. I encourage you to keep going, to stay straight, stay strong. I do want the people of Rankin County to know that I'm here for them. I'm running for office, not for me, not for personal gain, but because I feel like I can make a difference. And that's what I want to do. The election, of course, is Tuesday, December 2nd. And we need to get people to the polls. It's not supposed to rain, but it's supposed to be cold. And that's going to be the get people have to make their voice heard, as we've talked about. And so I'm encouraging people to get out there and vote on Tuesday. When the election's over, I'm hoping I am elected. And if so, then I will be available to serve the citizens of District 2, but all of Rankin County, because yeah, I'm elected by District 2, and that's my primary role and my primary point of emphasis. But at the same time, I want what's good for Rankin County, whether it's in Florence, Puckett, Pelahatchie, Pisgah, or right here at the reservoir area. So I'm looking to help Rankin County. I appreciate your time tonight, Chris. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be praying for you, and no matter what happens, you always have a spot in our hearts with us. You've done a lot of great things for the people in Rankin County so far, and we look forward to a lot more from you. So we'll be praying for you, and good luck on Tuesday.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, Derrel. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot. Good night.
Good night.